It's my pleasure to introduce Jane Sylvester, one of the 3 recipients this year, Early Career Faculty Award. And we look forward to your presentation. Jane is working currently on a book project that explores the intersection between verismo opera and histories of science in post-Unification Italy, a real academic description. And her most recent project, which is the focus of the talk today, explores the contemporary Italian operatic revivals, collaboration, and haute couture fashion design. It's certainly Maria Callas in a nice dress on the opening picture, clearly identifies that. She has quite a bit of support. She's at the moment involved in collaborations with the Lyric Opera in Kansas City and is working on an interdisciplinary performance series coming up in the Nelson Atkins, just to take out of the bio the local type of activities that Jane is involved in.
Having me. It's been a great pleasure to be a recipient of the award. A little bit of context about this opening slide here. The title Callas on the Catwalk, Operatic Revival in the House of Valentino is directly excerpted from the title of the presentation that I gave in Lisbon. So I thought I'd give us a little bit of a taste. And here is actually a beautiful snapshot from one of the collaborations that I studied in the broader project. It's not in the focus of the topic today, but this was a fashion collection by Valentino from 2018 that was inspired by Callas. So Lawless Woman is a very nice sort of replica of Callas in fashion design. The women were only meant to be emblematic of the late soprano. So UMKC Early Career Faculty Award supported the presentation of my new archival research at the Transnational Opera Studies Conference in Lisbon, Portugal in July 2023. The conference was an important collaborative round, which helped it to form new critical angles about operatic culture in modern day Rome, which we'll hear about in a few moments. And I'm pleased to share that as a result of this fruitful conference, I will be contributing a peer-reviewed chapter for an upcoming monograph entitled Embodied Musicology, Ways that Embodiment Shapes Performance and Reception through Revels. In the 1980s, operatic and fashion directors in Italy have explored the potential for symbiotic relationships within their creative areas, as evidenced by the collaborations between Missoni, Versace, and Fendi at La Scala, and most recently Valentino at the Teatro dell'Opera. During her collaboration with the Roman Theatre for their 2016 production of La Traviata, Maria Grazia Chiuri, then the co-creative director for Valentino, remarked, "Opera, like couture, is seen as something of the past, a little dusty, a little obsolete. Instead, it has to be rediscovered." The comment was apt for reasons beyond the obvious. In comparison to La Scala, the Teatro dell'Opera has historically struggled to gain cultural recognition on par with its Milanese counterpart. About obsolescence are familiar to scholars who have long questioned opera's contemporary status within and outside performance institutions. From contemplating opera's death to examining the multifaceted continuation strategies, musicologists have expressed concerns with immediacy, access, and affect in experiencing the genre. Heather Reeve observes that scholars tend to position opera's relevance as it, quote, persists or escapes the world of things, unquote, through studies of liveliness and ephemerality. Using the Teatro dell'Opera's archives, press coverage, and production footage, I evaluate opera's interdisciplinary means of finding sustenance and multisensory presence within this very world of things through Valentino's recent forays into the genre. In addition to the 2016 production featured in today's talk, Valentino revivified operatic heroines on the runway in 2014, and in 2018, as you saw in the opening slide, they created a collaboration inspired by Maria Callas, a force of repertorial revival in the 20th century. Embracing examinations of canonic rearrangement, fluidity, and fracture, I argue that Valentino's revivals of 19th century operatic culture seek to bring Italian repertories and theaters out of obsolescence through invocations of music as material culture. Ultimately, by showcasing the economic, political, and social ramifications of Valentino's work with the Teatro dell'Opera in Rome, I show how fashion's reformulations of operatic materials impact both conventional and unconventional structures of contemporary. The birth of the Italian fashion industry in the early 1920s was intrinsically tied to industrial growth and self-conscious modernization. As Luca Cotti has shown, while responses to developing practices that straddled industry and art, including photography, cinema, and advertising, were initially ambivalent, fashion was quickly taken up by writers and artisans as an art form equal to more heralded, long-standing practices like music and architecture. Italian fashion, as noted by cultural historian Christopher Brewer, has become in the past 40 years a particularly important creative collaborative medium of articulating taste and identity. Just before the premiere of the Traviata hosted by the Teatro dell'Opera with Valentino, Valerio Capelli remarked representatively in the Roman Corriere della Sera, quote, "Valentino and opera are a piece of Italy that everyone knows. You have to live it to fully understand it. The thrill of a tour in the most distant places, the only opportunity to speak Italian in the world." This call has always been ignored by Italian politicians, end quote. The critical reception, as well as remarks from creative figures and theater's personnel, reveal a great deal about the significance of this effort and raise questions about the nature of canonicity, specifically when considering Valentino's works as kind of cultural artifacts within the Italian, more specifically Roman, imagination. As I learned during the TOSC Lisbon conference, as well as conversations with the theater's longtime curator, Alessandro Malusardi, the Roman Opera House is conscious of its position in relation to other Italian juggernauts, namely La Scala and the Teatro San Carlo. In conversation, Malusardi shared with me that the Teatro dell'Opera's positions its uniqueness as a commitment to interdisciplinary novelty over its nearly 150-year history. From a financial perspective, La Traviata's run from May 24 to June 30 in 2016 was quite successful, attracting A-list celebrities, sold-out performances, and 1.2 million euros in sales revenue before the premiere. This was significant for the theater, which had been suffering great financial hardship. The superintendent and general manager, Carlo Fortes, proudly remarked that, quote, "The success of La Traviata is proof that public companies can recover," end quote, and that the, quote, "Traviata model is proof that Rome can get going again." Quote. In his ambitious perception, the success of a culturally and artistically significant institution could boost morale for an entire city. Valentino Garavani himself considered the collaboration a crucial opportunity to uplift opera's popularity and visibility within Italy at large. He reflected, quote, "Unfortunately, in Italy and abroad, it has great success, but has been relegated to the background. This time, it will prove to be something much more than many rock concerts that attract the masses," end quote. In a complimentary and hopeful manner, Gianluca Balzano wrote in the Corriere della Sera, "A project like the Valentinian one represents an important chapter for Italian culture. It doesn't matter how much the bel canto purists turn up their noses. Strength to art." Conti at La Scala sold Traviata on Callas. The fashionable wardrobe created by Liriti Nobili was impossible. Today, culture and opera houses need support. Collaborating through projects such as those in Rome and Milan indicate a path with strong potential. To Italy's Minister of Culture at the time, Dario Franceschini, Sofia Coppola's appointment as director was a strategic selection. Quote, "We are delighted to have her here," Franceschini lauded. "Also, because it is important for us to attract young people to the opera, and she is a cult director. Following the premiere, many reporters noted that the production's glamour was achieved at the sacrifice of directional adventurousness or musical effectiveness. Critics invested in these aspects of the production bemoaned the imbalance of artistic priorities. A writer from La Repubblica wrote a representative review, quote, "The costumes by Valentino were elegant. Black tie for the men, long dresses for the ladies. But the story stops there. Here's the problem. It is as if no drama was represented, no suffering was recounted. Elegant spaces for pure nothingness." One critic, Lorenzo Tozzi, went so far as to suggest, after so many questionable directions, see Barbiere and Cenerentola, hooked up with the alibi that we need to renew ourselves, whatever the cost, in order to gain an audience, Coppola's flaw was basically her greatest value. Perhaps one might wonder what other reason to invite her there was, except for that of safe business. The wide appeal of celebrity figures and glamour were key to attracting attention to not only an event, but to the genre, connecting opera with fashion, popular media, and the brand and figure-oriented consumption patterns of a younger generation. A particularly significant moment of the production discussed among critics was the opening Act 1 prelude to the opera, as you can see here, where soprano Francesca Dotto, as the principal Violetta, slowly descends down an enormous white staircase in one of Garavani's custom-designed gowns. In the actual performance, many critics scoffed at the excess of the opening scenery designed by Nathan Crowley, with one commentator claiming that the unjustified Wanda Osiris-like staircase distracted from the establishment of the opera's dramatic. Here is an example from the scene recorded at the dress rehearsal. It does need to be dark at this moment. The curtain is slowly coming up. And that the ball gown was designed to be the focal point of not only attention, but of storytelling, perhaps to the detriment of Dotto, who was clearly discussed in reception of the opening scene. The dress, a feat of black lace, taffeta, and tulle, took 800 hours to complete. We'll see the comparison to some of the other gowns that they've designed for these collaborations. Silhouette pays homage to traditional Victorian presentations of Violetta. Originally, the opera was meant to be set in the midnight. Is certainly the most remarkable feature of the design is the addition of a tulle cathedral-length mallard green train. Saw in the clip, the staircase serves as its own kind of catwalk, amplified in range, depth, and overall dimension to feature the gown as an expressive force. The cool-toned green of the train creates an optical illusion, a literal ripple effect of Violetta's presence with the blue lighting, the ruffled cascade and echo of her presence, a dancing shadow that further enlivens the first hints of her melody from Amami Alfredo, which was a sort of waltz-like melody that came. Tino's recent efforts offer a snapshot of the recent collaborations between figures of fashion and opera. A new sense of presence is achieved but at literally high costs. It mentioning that a complex issue involving high fashion's interventions into opera is that despite attempts to reach further to access more people, this method seems to reinscribe a kind of elitism that many invested practitioners are trying to combat today. Intriguingly, traditional priorities of Italian operatic practice were destabilized in the Valentinian examples. To put it in simple terms, beautiful sights upstage bel canto sounds. At the same time, the prioritization of the material celebrates that which is distinct about Italian operatic practices over its centuries of history. Ideologically, Italian opera has historically been very much about the material, about the body. What results from a material art form that aims to vivify a faceted sense of operatic presence or subjectivity that's not explicitly musical, but one that instead foregrounds the body in its fantastical artistic adornments. Immediacy and liveness in such collaborations is not necessarily sonic, but references to sound, to histories, to musical signs in a more arguably stable material form rather than an ephemeral expressive modality, evidently have left an evocative mark. Thank you. So this is actually the first sort of inroads to what will be a second book project, which I'm still simultaneously doing research on. This portion that I presented today, just for the sake of time, was one of 3 samples of Valentino's recent collaborations, largely based in Rome, but also in Paris, really sort of assessing this approach to the material with operatic collaboration over the past decade. The whole project for the second book there, I'm looking at some of the Milanese collaborations that I mentioned a little bit with Sony and Versace. And I'll be doing some archival research at La Scala to start sort of filling out those case studies. So this, that's so strange to see myself. Hello. But in the meantime, my first big project, which research, and I'm fleshing out the last case study of it, additionally on this archival trip that I'm taking this summer. And that's more focused on historical perspectives of looking at Italian realist opera and its intersections with contemporary scientific practices in the late 19th century. So 2 different projects, kind of the core of my identity as a musicologist, material culture and Italian opera, but one obviously with this more present-oriented approach and the other more historically